Bernie Sanders is doing a town hall on the Iran deal and foreign policy today. And he spoke to Cenk Uygur of TYT to promote it. And take a look at this back and forth. And then I want to talk about the multiple ways in which this is refreshing.
Cenk, it seems to me that in general, the Congress has abdicated its responsibility to the White House in terms of war-making responsibility. And as a nation, we don't discuss foreign policy. And I am especially concerned about the reckless nature of this president. I think withdrawing from the Iran nuclear treaty agreement is a very dangerous act. And I think we need a serious discussion about the implications of what that means short-term and long-term. And we brought together a panel of folks, and we're going to live stream it all over the country, and we're going to be working with you guys to try to get the word out so that people better understand what Trump's withdrawal from the treaty means.
Normally when you do these town halls, you break it up into different segments. What are the different topics you guys are going to talk about in regards to Iran and this deal?
You have politicians and presidents throughout history giving these great bellicose speeches, and their poll numbers go up. Oh, they're going to go to war and they're going to bring freedom and democracy to everybody. You know, we heard that in terms of the war in Vietnam. We heard that in terms of the war in Iraq. But I think people don't even know that back in 1953, the United States, along with the British, overthrew a democratically elected prime minister named Mohammad Mossadegh, reinstalled the Shah of Iran, who was a hated despot, which led to the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Revolution of '79, and the taking of hostages, and all the way to where we are today. So let's get a sense of unintended consequences, know something of the history of the region. The other thing, Cenk, this is what concerns me maybe more than anything. You are seeing Trump providing over $100 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia. This is a monarchy. This is a autocratic society which treats women as third-class citizens, which has a Wahhabism ideology, which is extremist, spreading that all over the world. And what I worry about very much is the United States becoming allied with Saudi Arabia, getting sucked into a never-ending Shia-Sunni battle, religious war in the Middle East. We have been, as you know, in Afghanistan for 17 years. We've been in Iraq for 15 years. And I don't want to see us get drawn into a never-ending war in the Middle East.
The United States and our allies starting hostilities as we did in 1953, and that was a democratically elected government that we overthrew for the sake of profits for American and British oil companies. That almost never gets talked about. And just today we had Iran and Israel exchange rocket fire, and that is incredibly dangerous. And there, 1 hour after Trump said that he was going to withdraw from the treaty, Israel launched missiles into Syria, into Iranian positions, and killed 15, including 8 Iranians. So we have this right-wing axis of the Trump administration, Netanyahu administration, and Saudi Arabia, as you correctly point out. How dangerous is that, and how much do they want to push us in the war?
Add to that, Cenk, and I think your analysis is correct. Add to that the fact that you have a military-industrial complex here in the United States, and that against my vote, we increased military spending by $165 billion over a 2-year period. You add all of those things up, and I worry, as I said a moment ago, about the United States getting drawn into just a war that never ends, that costs us lives. I mean, if you think about the unintended consequences of what happened in Iraq, the killing, not only the loss of lives of not only thousands of our own young men and women, but hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, the displacement of millions of people, the civil war in Syria.
Okay, so there are 6 points there that he made that I think are incredibly refreshing because you don't hear other politicians making these points. There are a handful, to be fair. You know, Ro Khanna touches on a lot of this stuff. Tulsi Gabbard touches on a lot of this stuff. But definitely in the Senate, Bernie might be the only one bringing up these points. So, first of all, just the idea that Trump's wars, he's bombing 8 countries now, by the way, that they're unconstitutional. That all of this is being filed under the authorization for use of military force that came all the way back during the Bush years. And they're even using that justification for getting involved in Yemen and bombing in Yemen and helping Saudi Arabia in Yemen. But a quick, cursory analysis of that genocide, honestly, is what it is, shows very quickly we're not even fighting Al-Qaeda. We're fighting Shia Houthi rebels. Of course, Shia Houthi rebels did not attack us on 9/11, did not attack us ever. And guess who's fighting the Shia Houthi rebels along with us? Saudi Arabia, but also extremist Sunni militias on the ground, Al-Qaeda. So we're using an authorization for use of military force that was supposed to be to fight Al-Qaeda to be de facto aligned with Al-Qaeda against Shia Houthis. That makes absolutely no sense. So you can't use that authorization for use of military force in Yemen. By the way, you know, if anybody's being honest about this, you can't use that authorization for use of military force in Somalia, where we're also bombing. You can't use it for Pakistan. You can't use it for a number of the places that we're bombing. So it's amazing that we just like passively accept that the president of the U.S., the commander-in-chief, yeah, he could bomb anywhere for any reason whatsoever, and nobody says anything. And on top of that, the person who now is the president is Donald fucking Trump, an unhinged reality star buffoon who doesn't know anything. So that's how extreme the situation is. And this precedent being set all the way back from Bush and then Obama, continuing a lot of this stuff, and now Trump taking the reins, and you see the problem with it. These wars are unconstitutional, and that needs to be pointed out. So that's the first refreshing point. Then he goes on, what fucking politician do you know that brings up the offensive attack from the U.S. when we overthrew the Iranian government? It was a CIA coup of the Iranian government in 1953. We overthrew a democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, because Mohammad Mossadegh planned on nationalizing Iran's oil to give the money to the people of Iran. Now, we were jacking the oil for cheap back then, so when he took over, we said, bitch. We overthrew him, put the Shah into place. The Shah continued to give the UK and the US the oil for very cheap. So we overthrew a democratically elected government for natural resources. And then we have the nerve to say today, like, all we're doing is protecting freedom and democracy. Well, you did the exact opposite. You overthrew the democracy and put a dictator in place. So it's all bullshit. Those arguments are such trash. And anybody who understands the history can clearly point that out. And you never hear a senator talk about that. Well, Bernie Sanders is changing that and bringing up history and bringing up facts and enlightening the American people so they understand what's been going on around the world with our money in our name. And these are war crimes. And then he goes on. So that's the second refreshing thing. The third refreshing thing is he brings up the $100 billion Saudi weapons deal and brings up the fact that this is one of the most extremist governments in the world. They have a Wahhabi ideology. So we're talking about fundamentalist, extremist, far-right Sunni Islam. And they behead people in the public square. They do it for fucking sorcery and witchcraft and drug smuggling and all these things that shouldn't even be fucking crimes in the first place. And this is the government we're aligned with as we pretend like we're against extremists. Well, you know, hey, 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia. That ideology, which is being spread all around the world, is from Saudi Arabia. And we're buddy-buddy with them. And we prop them up and we give them weapons. Again, nobody points this out except Bernie Sanders in the Senate. It's really refreshing to hear it. the $100 billion weapons deal. It's like every politician is just casually for it. And Bernie's like, hey, what the fuck are we? It's like he's in an episode of The Twilight Zone, and he's the last reasonable person on the planet. He looks around the Senate. He's like, everybody's just going to be fucking for this? This is nuts. Then the fourth thing that's refreshing, he brings up the Iraq war, the Afghanistan war. We've been in Afghanistan for 17 years. We've been in Iraq for 15 years. There are people who are born today, obviously, not born today, born around the time that these wars started, that are literally in their teens. They've never known a situation where the U.S. is not at war. And you go turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, obviously, they don't talk about these wars. It's almost like we're not at war because they're not talking about it. They're not showing the devastation. They're not showing the lives ruined. They're not showing the flag-draped coffins coming back here. They're not showing it. So, and this is doing the bidding of the government. This is doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex and the deep state. This is, hey, don't rock the boat. Let them fight endless wars. Why? Because it's not really like we're just going after terrorists, and that's what we're doing. We're protecting us from terrorists. Because when you look at the reality of the situation, what's in Afghanistan? Opium. You know what else is there? Trillions of dollars of mineral wealth. What's in Iraq? Oil. So, and not only that, we get to maintain control and power when you're in these very vital geopolitical positions. And of course, the U.S. views the world as a giant chessboard, and Russia's our enemy, so we need to have more control of the world than they do. And that's why these permanent occupations are not viewed as extreme in Washington. They're viewed as the norm and what it should be. Forget the lives. Who cares? The people are dying in the process. So that's what am I on? The fourth thing? The fourth thing that's refreshing is he's bringing up these wars and how long we've been there and how we shouldn't be there anymore. Again, no senators bring this shit up. It's unbelievable. This is the shit the Democrats should be running on. Hey, how about we end the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war where people are dying needlessly? And also, we've wasted trillions of dollars in these places. $7 trillion in Iraq, $2 trillion in Afghanistan. What the fuck are we doing? Meanwhile, Flint, Michigan doesn't have clean water and our infrastructure gets a grade of D+. Are you fucking kidding me? The fifth thing is, Bernie actually said it. He said the words, the military-industrial complex. And he brought up the war budget. We increased by $165 billion. His fucking free college bill, you can give everybody in the country free college for less than the amount we just increased the military budget this year. And nobody's screaming about, everybody would scream, oh, free college, we can't afford that. But that bill passed overwhelmingly for an increase of over $100 billion in the military budget. And nobody was like, oh, I don't know if we can afford this. They just said, no, we value this, so we're going to spend on this and it's fine. Well, I guess then just admit you don't value educating people because free college is cheaper than that. And all of you would scream about, it's too expensive. So refreshing to hear him bring up the fact that the military-industrial complex is a thing. And then the final point is, Bernie is one of the only politicians in the U.S. who bothers to bring up not just dead American soldiers, but dead civilians on the other side that we're responsible for. It's amazing how much more in touch he is with reality and with basic human decency and with the American people than all the other politicians are. Nobody's coming close to him. Elizabeth Warren even voted for that increase in the military budget. So it's a shame that I feel like so many of the things he says and does are just common sense positions, but it's so rare. It's so rare in Washington, D.C. This guy's a national treasure, and I hope he's our next president in 2020.